Copyright laws are outdated and have not moved with the technological progress of music. Copyright is supposed to encourage creativity. It is used to ensure that artists can protect their works, but also to ensure that there is an availability of raw materials for future creation. However, copyright laws have become the tools of large music companies in making exorbitant amounts of money. In essence, amendments should be made on these laws that can be more specific and will protect the innovations of creativity. In 1822, British music critic F.W. Horncastle said, "In these enlightened days, when art seems to have reached its very utmost perfection, and science its most refined furnish, there must be a considerable portion of unconscious imitation in almost all their productions." Even musicologist Konstantin von Sternberg argued in 1919 that reshaping previously composed material was a legitimate standard practice among esteemed composers like Chopin, Haydn, and Mozart. Plagiarism occurred only when a composer added nothing new. The purpose of American copyright was to protect the expressions of ideas, not the ideas themselves. However, making the distinction between an idea and an expression is difficult in music. Can a 2-second guitar riff be an original enough expression to warrant a copyright protection? Well, in 2004, in the case of Bridgeport versus Dimension Films, Bridgeport Music accused the rap group NWA of illegally sampling a 3-note electric guitar arpeggio of Funkadelic's "Get Off Your Ass and Jam." A Tennessee district court ruled that the sample was too short for the need of clearance. However, the Sixth Circuit Court reversed the ruling. A sound recording owner has exclusive right to sample his own recording. Get a license or do not sample. We do not see this as stifling creativity in any significant way. It must be remembered that if an artist wants to incorporate a riff from another work in his or her recording, he is free to re-perform the sound of that riff in the studio. The market will control the license price and keep it within bounds. The court ruled that the way the arpeggiated chord is used and memorialized in the Get Off sound recording is original and creative, and therefore entitled to copyright protection. So, what is copyrightable material? Let's move back a little and look at the history of copyright in music. At the beginning of the 20th century, the music industry mainly consisted of sheet music businesses, and musicians made money through performing and selling sheet music. Only with Edison's invention of the phonograph and Freun's invention of the player piano did recordings become the dominant medium for musical distribution. But at this time, recording would be what we call now as piracy. During this time, copyright gave composers the exclusive right to control copies of their music and the exclusive right to control public performances of their music. However, the law did not specify if the composer was owed anything if the recording was not of a public performance, and if the song had been recorded from memory instead of sheet music. If you recorded the song in your own home and then made copies of it, then it was legal. Therefore, in 1909, an amendment was made to the Copyright Act. Record companies were free to distribute copies of recordings as long as they paid the copyright holder, which was usually the composer, a fee set by the law. Once the composer authorized the recording of the song, others were free to record the same song as long as they paid the original composer the fee. This gave the recording companies a means to make a lot of money off of the songs, as the market for recordings was much bigger than the market for sheet music. The technology also afforded the means to completely duplicate songs instead of having to completely re-perform compositions. Duplication made sampling much easier. Popular use of sampling began in the 1970s with club DJs. In order to bring the crowds up into a frenzy, DJ Kool Herc would often play a 30-second break piece, which consisted of drum, bass, and guitar beats. Playing break after break created an endless peak of dance beats, thus leading many DJs to follow his style. The beginnings of rap started with the DJs. Vocal entertainment was needed to keep the crowd under control and dancing. James Brown's shoutouts from songs like Give It Up or Turn It Loose inspired many MCs because the vocals encouraged the audience to participate in the music, really emphasizing the rhythm and raw emotion with each syllable spoken on beat. Thus MCs began to make rhymes to the musical tracks mixed by DJs. As rap continued to develop, it began to incorporate commentaries on past musical legacies. The samples conveyed a context for the messages in the lyrics that would have been missed if the listeners were not already familiar with the references. An example would be Ice Cube's 1990 The Product, which is about a black teenager dropping out of school and becoming a thief. The teenager later renounces his ways in order to raise a family, but is eventually sent to jail for his crimes, where he contemplates committing suicide. One of the samples in the track is from You Can Make It If You Try by Sly and Family Stone. In turn, the use of samples also stimulated the listeners into a renewed interest in the original sample artists. As mentioned, the 1909 amendment to the Copyright Act stipulated that record companies were free to distribute copies of recordings as long as they paid the copyright holder a fee set by the law. For 2004 to 2005, the fee for each reproduction unit was 8.5 cents per minute for a song lasting 5 minutes or less. However, music labels have the freedom to determine their prices for borrowing clearances. The minimum cost for a master recording clearance is around $2,000 to $7,000 plus 2 to 4 cents for every unit sold. If the song was already popular, the fee would be higher. In light of the high cost of sampling, many musicians use sample packs, which are collections of sounds that can be incorporated into recordings using software programs. When these packs are purchased, all licensing is paid for, and the consumer does not need to pay anything for its further use. However, these packs may end up saturating tracks with the same types of sounds, compromising music diversity. Due to this expense, sampling will thus persist among artists who are wealthy enough to afford the licensing costs, or artists who are obscure enough to avoid the risk of getting caught. This may lead to the future of music being under the control of big music labels who can pay the licensing costs. Obscure artists who may become popular will have to face implications of expensive court settlements. Copyright is supposed to encourage creativity. However, the future for innovation in music looks dim. Current copyright regulations do not really benefit the artist. Rather, major music labels are making a big buck out of it. New amendments should be made to the copyright law in order to meet the needs of future artists.